Everyone, the Secretary will deliver some opening remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. We'll try and get to as many questions as we can, and so I'd ask you just to limit your questions so we can get to as many reporters as possible. And with that, Mr. Secretary.
Good. Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in Tampa once again with Chairman Joe Dunford. And along with General Joe Votel and General Tony Thomas, our newest combatant commander. I'm grateful to each of them for their leadership, for the tremendous skills and unique expertise they bring to their new positions. And I'm also grateful to General Lloyd Austin for his leadership and his many years of service to this country. I recognize, and I know all of you do, that these men have key decisions to make as they begin their commands. So we're going to be brief, but I do want to make a few points, and then I'll have plenty of time for your questions. For both of these critical commands, this will be a seamless transition, with their new leaders moving full speed ahead on all their missions. At SOCOM, leveraging the unparalleled excellence of our outstanding Special Operations Forces to quietly, expertly neutralize threats that can emerge early and nearly anywhere on Earth. And at CENTCOM, delivering ISIL a lasting defeat, as well as helping build a more secure future in Afghanistan, countering Iran's malign influence, helping our partners grow more capable against shared threats, maintaining security and freedom of navigation in the Gulf, working with U.S. European Command to help ensure Israel's security and strategic depth, and much more. Working closely together with our partners, these two leaders will take our counter-ISIL coalition military campaign plan and execute it with the characteristic precision and rigor we've seen from them on the battlefield. Indeed, since we began accelerating the campaign in October, our pressure and local forces have gathered momentum, inflicting damage to ISIL's military forces, its financial network, its access to foreign fighters, its mobility and command and control, and its leadership. In recent weeks, coalition forces have severed the main artery between ISIL's power centers in Raqqa, Syria, and ISIL in northern Iraq, and begun the early stages of operations to collapse ISIL's control over Mosul, and targeted ISIL associates who were directly involved in external plotting and training, and eliminated key leaders from ISIL's cabinet. ISIL's now under pressure from all sides. And going forward, with the leadership of these men and the steadfast dedication of our partners, we'll build on this momentum. We'll continue to accelerate this campaign, and we'll be doing more in accordance with our strategic approach and leveraging our unique capabilities, including cyber, special operations, among many others. President Obama has been clear that accelerating the defeat of ISIL is his top priority, and I'm confident that as we create opportunities against ISIL, we'll be able to seize them. Now, destroying ISIL's parent tumor militarily in Iraq and Syria is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The complex geopolitical dynamics remain one of the greatest challenges. As I said when I was here in January, we must also destroy ISIL's metastases around the world and continue to work with our counterparts to protect the homeland. For only together can we deliver ISIL a lasting defeat. Okay, we'll now take a few questions. Peter?
Great. Again, everyone, if you could limit your questions, we'll get to as many people as we can. We'll start with our traveling press, then go back and forth with the local press. And I was remiss last time in advising you to hit the microphone button before you speak. Begin with Kevin Barron, Defense One.
Hi, thank you for holding the press conference today, and congratulations on your new positions. I'll start with NATO, and you can do ISIS next. But a simple question to go off of what we've heard from the campaign trail recently. From now that we have both the Secretary and the Chairman here on the record for us, is NATO very obsolete?
NATO has done important work for our security and for international security since its original founding mission, which was to wage the Cold War, was successfully completed in the late 80s and early 90s. NATO took on Afghanistan. Today, NATO is working in the Aegean. I'm just picking some examples here on the refugee crisis as a mechanism for Germany and Greece and Turkey to work together. NATO has played an instrumental role in Afghanistan and helping the Afghan government and the Afghan security forces to restore decency and some stability to that country. We are working with NATO now on strengthening the deterrence of Russian aggression, and also so-called hybrid warfare in Europe. We're working with NATO allies on security issues in the Mediterranean that derive from ISIL. We're discussing with NATO the possibility of NATO participating as NATO. Many NATO nations participate in the coalition against ISIL, but participating as NATO. So there is a lot that NATO has done and is doing. And Chairman, if you want to add anything to that.
The thing I say, Kevin, I mean, that question,
The microphone.
okay. No,
He should have
yeah, I
one.
think I'd be able to come across.
Yeah, if you can. But the thing I would say is, I think that question probably is a question that might have been asked 15 years ago, but it's hard to think about asking that question today when you look at the challenges in Europe, both to the east and the south. So the fundamental question is collective security for NATO still a requirement? The answer is yes. Does the United States still have common interests with our European partners in addressing those security challenges? The answer would have to be yes. And I would foot stomp the Secretary's comments about the out-of-theater contribution that NATO has made. I had the privilege of commanding NATO forces in Afghanistan, and when you think about it, it's pretty extraordinary that for 10 years, NATO has formed the core of a coalition in Afghanistan that has stayed together and still is together today with the Resolute Support Mission to move Afghanistan in the future. And again, the Secretary mentioned the Aegean. There's also a broad build partnership capacity effort by our NATO partners. We are a part of that as well in North Africa to harden states against ISIL. So in my mind, the relevance of NATO is not at all in question. In fact, I think it's a question of making sure we have the right focus because there's a lot of work to be done.
Howard?
Hey, gentlemen, this is, excuse me, congratulations, gentlemen, for your new jobs.
I had a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, congratulations on your new jobs. General Votel, if you can talk to me about your assessment of the Iraqi security forces' approach to Mosul. Are you satisfied that they have the capacity and capability to defeat Daesh there? And, if not, what do you propose U.S. forces might do?
Well, thanks, Howard. Well, certainly I've got a lot to look into specifically with how the Iraqi security forces are doing that. And I look forward to doing that very, very quickly. But I think some of what you're seeing now is that you're beginning to see the Iraqi security forces stepping forward and conducting operations and starting to begin to move towards Mosul as we've done over a period of time. Excuse me, over a period of time. Excuse me, over a period of time. And continue to push towards that objective up there. So I think there is progress being made. There certainly is more that needs to be done. We need to continue to support them with all of our capabilities, and I look forward to a more detailed assessment of that.
Would you recommend that, as you get, into the job, would you recommend a greater U.S. presence there?
Well, I think those discussions are underway here right now, and I know the Chairman and the Secretary have been having some discussions on that, so I look forward to joining that.
Yeah, let me just say that we are looking for opportunities to accelerate the campaign against ISIL. That's the instructions the President has given us. So as we develop those opportunities, we want to do more. So I'll be looking to General Votel as we look to General Austin for opportunities consistent with our basic strategic approach, which is to enable capable and motivated local forces on the ground to take and hold territory, but with strong help from us. And then I also, apropos your question, I mean, it's very important that the Iraqi government be able to continue, as it has very strongly under Prime Minister Abadi, to provide the overall support to the Iraqi security forces and to reconstruction. That context is very important. It's not a military context, but it's, I mentioned it in my statement, very important.
Thanks.
Andrew?
Thanks. Andrew Tillman with Military Times. Following on the ISIS question, General Dunford, you mentioned that the other day that you thought that in the coming weeks we would probably see an increase in troops over there. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about why now? I mean, Mr. Secretary, you've talked about offering some support to the Iraqis for several months now. The Iraqis haven't made a formal request for that. Have the Iraqis made a formal request for additional support, or what else is happening now that makes you think that this is the time to ratchet up that presence?
So Andrew, what happened in the wake of Ramadi was the Iraqi security forces put together a plan for Mosul and continued operations. And so they shared that plan with our commander on the ground, General McFarland, and then they had a conversation about what enabling capabilities could we provide that would allow the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga to maintain the momentum that we have started to see over the last couple of months. So the timing of our request, and again, the Secretary, I brought it to the Secretary will engage with the President on what the President has asked us to do, which is to come to him with ideas that will allow us to maintain that momentum. But the timing really now is focused on the next phase of the campaign, which is towards Mosul and maintaining the kind of momentum that we had in Ramadi. So it's directly attributable to developing the plan for Mosul, sitting down, coming up with a common plan with the coalition on the ground led by General McFarland, and then figuring out what capabilities would best enable, again, to emphasize the point the Secretary made, what capabilities would best enable the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga to be successful in operations in Mosul.
Can you talk to any capabilities in particular?
At this time, no, I can't, Andrew, but again, those recommendations are being made, and the President will have an opportunity to make some decisions here in the coming weeks.
Go to the local side, third from the end there, sir. You could identify yourself to be helpful. Thank
Yes, can you hear me okay? Hi, this is Susan Katz-Keating. I'm with American Media Institute. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for doing this, and congratulations on your new positions. It's great. We've read in recent operations that it appears that on ISIL home territory that they are on the run, or they're at least being administered a fair amount of grief. It appears that we're prevailing against them on their home territory. However, can we expect them to strike back outside of their home territory in increasing aggression?
Well, I do understand that, yes, we are gathering momentum in Iraq and Syria. That is necessary, but as your question indicates, it's not sufficient. ISIL has aspirations to strike outside, either by inspiration or varying degrees of direction and enabling. Europe has seen that already. Obviously, we are concerned about that, so we do have to combat ISIL elsewhere. And as I said, I fully expect that we will be successful in Iraq and Syria at defeating ISIL, but there are the metastases around the world, and there's the homeland fight itself. All of those need to be waged in parallel.
Can I have a follow-up question, please? In follow-up?
you. Move on, just so I want to make sure everyone gets a question, so
Gotcha,
thanks very
okay.
much. Here on the, Paul?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Paul Schenken with U.S. News and World Report. Can you talk a little bit about the Russian assistance to the Syrian armed forces in retaking Palmyra? Do you see that as a positive step? And looking more broadly, at some point, is the U.S. going to need to coordinate with Russia on military activity as these borders begin to close up, as you say?
Well, two things. I mean, first of all, what we really need the Russians to do is to advance the political solution. They have unique leverage there because of their relationship with the Syrian regime. And what we really need is an end to the civil war. So I'm hoping that that's what comes out of Geneva, and I hope that that's where the weight of the Russian effort lies. And I'm sorry, the second part of it was?
At some point, is the U.S. going to need to coordinate with the Russians? And General Dunford, you talked about how you had spoken to your Russian counterpart recently. I wonder, General Votel, if you've had any contact with Russian leaders.
We have actually quite often professional discussions aimed at making sure that there are no incidents as we pursue our operations. Nothing Russia's done in Syria has impeded our fight against ISIL. And so our discussions have had the purpose of making sure there was no possibility of an incident between Russian forces and U.S. forces. Those discussions continue, and they're very fruitful, they're very professional, and so we're satisfied with them, but that's as far as it goes.
Yes.
Trevor Pettiford from Bay News 9 here in Tampa. That's not for me. Congratulations, Generals, first of all. I have two questions, actually. One, I wanted to know what yours and the President's expectations are of this new command structure, and Generals yourself, what you expect of yourselves in this new command structure. Also, with the recent terrorist attacks we've seen abroad, it brings more and more concerns here at home about not if, but when it will happen here. What reassurances can you give the American public that you're doing everything you can to keep it from happening here?
Well, with respect to expectations, I think that if I and the President didn't have high expectations of these two officers, they wouldn't have been nominated for confirmation by the Senate, and by the way, the Senate wouldn't have confirmed them. So our trust and confidence is complete. That's why they are where they are. I mean, that said, we all know we have work ahead of us, but these are the right guys to do that work. So the trust and confidence is there. As far as the broader campaign against ISIL is concerned, we will defeat ISIL. I'm confident of that. It's going to require effort in Syria and Iraq. It's going to require effort around the world, and yes, it's going to require protection against the homeland. But I mean, look at the tremendous strength and power behind the organizations that these guys are taking over today. That will prevail together with our coalition. But we got a lot of work to do. Let me just ask,
Your expectations of
Thanks.
yourself.
I would just add, as kind of as a guy who's coming from SOCOM to CENTCOM here, one of the things I hope to be able to do is to take what I learned at SOCOM as kind of a trans-regional command who looks more globally and really apply that to the problems that we're dealing with in CENTCOM. Certainly we can't just be insular to ourselves and look at the problems in Iraq and Syria. We have to recognize that the problems that emanate from that area affect other areas, and so we have to work very closely with all of our partners on there, whether it's European Command, Africa Command, SOCOM, or a variety of others to do that. And so I think that for me, that will be one of the things that I'll be trying to pay a lot of attention to early on.
And not to invert what General Votel just said, but my intent as the new SOCOM commander will be to support him regionally in the CENTCOM AOR. Obviously, some very strong investments there, as well as to continue to refine these trans-regional strategies going forward for the Secretary and for the President. I would like to emphasize, though, that the threat of external attacks is our #1 priority and our ability to disrupt that. So among the many threats out there, that is a clear focus and effort on our part to disrupt any external threat.
Jeremy?
Jeremy here with Politico. Generals Votel, Thomas, congratulations. I want to ask you guys if you could talk a little bit about balancing secrecy with the need for public information on these wars, as they increase, and particularly as the U.S. looks to target and potentially capture more ISIL leaders.
I'll start, and maybe Tony can jump in here. I've had a discussion with the Secretary and others here about this. I think this is an important issue. I think what we want to try to do is we certainly recognize the public needs to understand what's happening. They need to understand where we're having progress. They need to understand what the status is of the things that we're doing in the name of our country. But what we also are very keen to do is protect our approaches and provide our people on the ground the maximum opportunity to accomplish the missions that we're asking them to do. And so I think that requires a very careful balance. I've been very pleased with how the department's been approaching that here lately, and I think we're doing a good job of it. We're trying to tell the story, but yet not tell so much that it takes away the advantages for our people on the ground.
I'd offer, while our operations are necessarily secret, we are absolutely committed to the accountability we have to the American people and to the President of the United States. So there's a balance there, and certainly the American public have a need to know what we're doing, and that we're doing it in the right way, consistent with American values. So we accept that that's a challenge in terms of information, but as General Votel mentioned, I think where we do have concerns is where it starts to imperil the tactics and techniques that we employ, and more importantly, the people involved. We've had a rash of true name disclosures here recently, which I don't see serving any purpose other than to put those people in jeopardy.
I just want to fully support what they both said. Absolutely.
I'm Richard Danielson with the Tampa Bay Times. This question initially is for General Votel, although I might like to hear from the Secretary as well. Last year, within Central Command, there arose some concerns about the quality of intelligence being produced by its analysts, how that was being handled, how it was being presented. And I'm curious what your plans are coming in to ensure that you're getting good intelligence and you're in a position to present that to all the other people you work with confidence, and that the analysts have confidence in how the organization treats their work.
Could we do it the other way around? And
Sure.
And the reason is, Joe, you absolutely speak to the question. I just want to say that in the matter that you're referring to, that's a matter that's been referred to the Inspector General of the Department of Defense. I have a lot of confidence in the Inspector General and their ability to get to the bottom of that, and I want to make sure it's clear we can't comment on that. I'll just, speaking for myself, and I don't think it's any different for anybody else, I depend upon and demand good information of all kinds, but that includes intelligence information. So I want intelligence people to tell us, give it to me straight, and that's the only way that you can responsibly make decisions. So with that said, and the past behind, Joe, for the future, anything you
Secretary, I
want
think
to
you
say?
got it. I think you nailed it there. I just think it's extraordinarily important. You know, as I mentioned a few moments ago when in my remarks after the change command at CENTCOM, the most important resource that CENTCOM has is our people. And we rely on their experience, we rely on their expertise, we rely on their ability to help us think through and work through and understand difficult problems. And so what we've got to have is we've got to continue to nurture, and we've got to continue to encourage an environment that allows people within the organization to come forward and put out the information so it can be absorbed by commanders and other leaders, and we can assess that, and we can use that to help inform our decisions and recommendations. So I look forward to really supporting that kind of approach.
Last question to Jacqueline, please.
Hi, Jacqueline Klimas with the Washington Examiner. I'm wondering if any of you can provide an update about the investigation into intelligence manipulation in Central Command and when we might expect to see results of that.
Well, that gets back to the previous question, and that's a matter that is now with the Inspector General, the Department of Defense, and therefore I can't comment on that except to tell you that it's under investigation by the Inspector General, and that's, I think, the right thing, and I have confidence in that. To the more general issue, I'd only repeat what I just said, which is we've got to have intelligence told to us straight. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make the right decisions. You need good information. And by the way, it doesn't just come from intelligence. Obviously, we read your own reporting and we talk to our people in the field, so there are lots of sources of information, but insofar as intelligence is concerned, it's got to come straight. And so I want our intelligence folks to know that we expect that, and I'm sure that's true of all the guys behind me as well.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I know it's still a big day ahead for the generals here giving the ceremonies. Thanks very much.
Well done, guys.
See you guys.
Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Nice to meet you. See you again, man.
Good to see you, man. We'll talk to each other.
Nice to meet you. See you guys. Let me know if you're coming down again. We'll go out for a drink.
Let's try.
Yeah, about the other thing, sure. Yeah, okay, sounds good. I asked that question last time they were here about the intel. Didn't get much.
I know. We just got to get an update.
Yeah.
It's been months now. There's new commanders. There was a lot of thought was like, we rusted a leak in light of fire.
Frankly, I think that was overblown. But you got to do it.